And welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you've had a wonderful Monday, and that everything is going on well for you guys. It's a pleasure to be here. I mean, it's been a bit of a mixed day for me. Some moments of tension and sort of, what should I call it? Tension. That's what you can call it, really. Nothing more than that or less than that, really, as the Uganda Cranes were up against South Africa. So beautiful game of football that we did witness. And we're going to be discussing about that, and of course a lot more. Of course, as we speak at the moment, there is a game ongoing in the Premier League between Everton and Leeds. So we're going to be speaking about that. I'm trying to have my headline edited, but I don't know. Something is not happening for me. I don't know. Something is not happening. Right. Allow me or indulge me. See if I can make this correct. Let me see if I can try something else. Otherwise, things are not happening the way they should be happening. Things are not happening the way they should be happening. And that's why we are delaying. Maybe, just maybe, you can indulge me. Anyways, in the meantime, let me have our audios tested and make sure everything checks out before we proceed any further. On tonight's topic. But our conversation will revolve around the Uganda Cranes and Chan, and of course from the Premier League as well. Apologies for those of you that managed to catch our morning broadcast. It was sort of antagonized by power going off. As unfortunate as that sounds, it did happen. So it was something that happened beyond our own control. So we just had to let it be. And by the time it came back, majority of you had dropped off. So there isn't much that you could have done about that. But it is what it is. Otherwise, it's all been good. And I pray that tonight gets better. For those of you that are following that game between Leeds and Everton, yeah, are you enjoying the game, or you just equally like me? In between trying to keep tabs on the game and things like that. Anyways, for those of you that are just joining us, welcome to the Football Tribe UG channel. My name is Robert Kesakos, and it's about approximately 14 minutes past the hour of 11 p.m. East African time that I do come to you live from Kampala, Uganda. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to our new community members. Do me that absolute honor and favor and like the broadcast, but also subscribe to the channel and help it grow to 2,000 subscribers. That's the objective for this month of August. I hope we can, reach that mark. It would do me the absolute honor and favor if we can hit those numbers before the end of this month. So do me that absolute favor and subscribe to the channel. Also, do let me know where you're joining us from. What did you feel? What your day has been like? Pedri, sorry, Uncle, I'm watching Levy. What game is that? Do you mean you're watching Elche? The Elche game? Is that what you're trying to refer to? Against Real Betis, because Lee Eve, whatever that is, I don't know. I thought you would be watching. Leeds versus United. Versus Everton. Okay, that's all good. I'm equally keeping tabs on that game as well as we continue with this broadcast. So I'll be reading your comments. Tone Bang says, "Hey black man, hey Tone, how are you doing? Where are you joining us from, Tone, this evening? Norway. How is it, man? It's all good. Tester of life. How is it? How has been your day? Were you able to catch the game between South Africa and Uganda? And if you are able to, give me your sentiments or your overview or your review of the game, because we had two games today in the Africa. Hey, black man is crazy. I mean, people define you or describe you the way they see fit, and I can have no control about their tongues or their keyboard. So it is what it is. Anyways, so two games from Group C in the African Nations Championships. Of course, Algeria and Niger did share the spoils in a goalless draw, and Niger finishing that game with a with a manless down to 10 men, while it was a dramatic encounter between Uganda Cranes and South Africa. Now, it's a game that Uganda needed to draw or at least win to guarantee their qualification into the quarterfinals of the African Nations Championships for the first time in their history. You know, my day was good. How was yours? I didn't get a chance to watch, but a three draw is unbelievable match. Now, if somebody tells you just the results, you may think, oh, it was a tight, everything was tight or something like that. You may think it was a sort of a man-to-man kind of context or contest. Yes, it may have been that for some parts of the game, but South Africa were running away with the result. At some point, it was 3-1 with South Africa leading, and with just, a couple of minutes to go, Uganda leveled the scoring and threw penalties. That's why the headline says South Africa robbed, exclamation mark, Uganda Cranes through to the quarterfinals of CHAN. That's why we're having that kind of headline, because I want to get the sentiments for those of you that managed to catch the game, or at least a glimpse of it, to let me know what you guys felt, what you guys thought about the fixture in itself. So, Uganda Cranes did open the scoring through Judse Mugabe in the 31st minute of the game. That was in the first half, and they took with them a 1-0 lead into halftime. I mean, they're one of the co-hosts of the competition with Kenya and Tanzania, alongside the other three co-hosts who have already, by the way, qualified to the quarterfinals themselves. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Oh, Pedri, there's a version in Africa of the UEFA Nations League. Call it that. Now, the difference in this case is that the difference in this particular case is that the players that play in the African Nations Championships for their respective countries must be playing within their domestic local leagues. So, for example, let's say if Spain, apologies. For example, if South Africa, if for example Spain is playing against England, only players playing from within the Spanish La Liga will be eligible to represent Spain, and players only playing within the Premier League will be eligible to represent England in that match. So that's why it's called the African Nations Championship. I'm having a call from somebody. I don't know. Am I allowed to check the call? Let me check the call, guys. Hello. Yes. Apologies, my people. One of my bosses was calling, so I thought it could be an emergency that I need to handle. What a call! Yeah, apologies on that, guys. It's from one of my bosses, and I needed to respond. In my line of work, you never know. You could be doing a live broadcast, and yet there's a media crisis going on there with a certain brand that you're supposed to be managing or representing, things like that. But anyways, it's all good. So I hope that you get the explanation. Only players that play within the domestic leagues are allowed to represent their country. So, for example, Uganda, players that play within the Uganda Premier League are the ones allowed to represent Uganda Cranes. Players that play in the South African domestic league are the ones allowed to represent South Africa at this stage. Bro just ended the call with only saying yes. Yeah, because it was a simple question for which I needed to say yes, and I didn't want to bore you guys with the details. In any case, I was going to tell the person on the other end of the call that I'm on a live broadcast. So please permit me to call you back later. But it's all good. So Uganda took the lead into halftime, and when they came back in the second half, they were shambolic by now. They were really, really shambolic. They defended poorly. Things were not going right for them. And now, some of these South African names are really difficult for me to pronounce, so I'll try my best. Uganda Cranes sounds like a street brand. Yeah. Now, because I don't know if you've had the chance to see the Ugandan flag. In the middle of the Uganda flag, it has a bird called the crested crane. So that crested crane is what the country says Uganda Crane, and that's why our airline is called Uganda. The Uganda, is it the Uganda Crested Crane? No, why Uganda Airline? Something like that. Then we also have the she cranes, teams like that. That's for the female guys. Sugarcane? No. Crested Crane. Crest and crane. Crane with CR. Anyways, so Ramari Mfaleli did squad in the 52nd minute to restore parity for South Africa, and then just about 6 minutes later, Thabiso did also score to make it 2-1 in favor of South Africa. And while Uganda were grasping to find that equalizer in the game, they doing everything they could. They left themselves open, and of course, South Africa capitalized on that, and Ndlondo did score to make it 3-1 at the time. Now, personally, for me, I thought Uganda were as good as that, and I'm sure the fans that were live in the stadium thought just as much. People, some of the radio commentators that were doing commentary on the game, they thought it was good as done, the story for Uganda, because until today, Uganda had never qualified out of the group stages from this tournament. They did partake in the edition that was in Rwanda in 2016. In 2014, they were there in South Africa. By the way, South Africa 2014, they did well. They won one game, drew the other, but still never managed to qualify out of the group stage. So it was the first time that this was happening, So, and personally, I thought we were good as that. But then in the 88th minute, that is 3 minutes after South Africa had found this third goal, Uganda won themselves a penalty, which was converted by a player who, not 2 games ago, was stripped of the captaincy because they thought it was too much responsibility for him. Alan Okello, one of the best players in that Uganda Cranes team, if not the very best that there is. In my opinion, he's really, really the best. So he stepped up, converted the penalty, and it was 3-2. And then at the time, Uganda wins themselves the second penalty. And all these were subject to VAR review. For the second penalty, it was a handball. The ball hit the players, the South African player handled the ball in the air, but the ball actually struck his elbow. Of course, the hand was deemed to be in a natural position, and the penalty was awarded, while the earlier penalty, it had been a foul against, I think, Ahimbi Sibwe, the Uganda Cranes striker. So, and I think it was Rogers Turach that stepped up and scored in the 96th minute, and the game ended 3-3, which meant that Uganda got to finish on top of Group C with a tally of 7 points, and while Algeria came second with a tally of 6 points, just as much as South Africa, but Algeria with a better goal difference got to go through, and that's how Uganda got themselves into the quarterfinals of the African Nations Championships for the very first time in their history. So yeah, beautiful game of football to watch. Hilary Mukundane quite defended well, but I mean, it's the kind of fixture that Uganda will never forget, but also in terms of overall performance, they may want to forget quickly, because that was a poor show of defending. They let themselves down in the way in pursuit of an equalizer, which nearly cost them everything. But sometimes, and yet they took all the risks thereafter, and they paid off. South Africans felt hard done by the decisions of the referee. Having two penalties awarded against them in a space of about 8 minutes. So they felt hard done by. They had lots of verbal exchanges between them and the referee. And after the final whistle, the referee literally had to be guarded by the stewards and be let off the turf because South African players were in disarray. They felt hard done by the referee's decisions. But it is what it is. I thought all the penalties that were awarded to Uganda were reasonable penalties. They were justified penalties. So yeah, but it doesn't take away that the fact that South Africans will feel a bit disenfranchised and knowing that they were up against a home team, Uganda, even though in the setup of the fixture, Uganda appeared to be the one to be playing away from home, but they were on Ugandan soil, and it finished 3-3. Okay, let me read some of the comments. Okay, Pedri says, I do not know what you guys, I have explained that. Uganda Cranes sounds like a sweet brand. Okay, so it's not an important tournament. No, it is a very important tournament. And the reason as why it is important is African players or African players playing within their domestic leagues get the exposure, at an international scene to be scouted by scouts to go to areas where there's greener pastures. So, for example, if a Uganda Cranes player makes a transfer to go to Kenya or Tanzania, usually that's a slight step ahead. But also in terms of finances, they get to earn more. They could earn themselves a move to Algeria, where Alan Okello did play at some point in a team called Parado. They could earn themselves a move to the South African League. It could be somewhere in the second or third tier leagues in Europe, depending on what the scouts make of your performances, like that. So it's that kind of tournament that gives players that play within their domestic leagues the platform to showcase their talent and perhaps attract more interest from elsewhere within the continent and as well as outside the continent. So that's the major essence of the tournament in itself. That's why it was initiated, to try and further market more players because the continent wants to push out more talent within itself across the continent, but also outside the continent. So look at it as a second tier competition to the Africa Cup of Nations, because after the AFCON, it's the next best competition when it comes to a country football. And then after that, you'll add in what we call regional block tournaments. For example, we do have the Sekafa tournament, which is played by countries within the East African region. Sometimes they get to invite one. You do have a tournament played in COSAFA. That's countries around South Africa, Namibia, Botswana. Then there's a tournament in West Africa and things like that. So it's a very important tournament. Then what I call, I responded to that. Isn't the crane your national bird? Yes, it is. The crested crane is our national bird. So you'll find some of our things attached with the name, the cranes. So you have the Uganda cranes, you have the she cranes, you have the cricket cranes. Then our basketball team is called the Silverbacks. The Silverbacks relating to our chimpanzees and gorillas that we do have, the primates here. So they are to further market the country. LFC, good to have you on the broadcast. How has been your day? Guys, do not forget to kindly like the broadcast. Thank you so much. But LFC, how has been your day? Are you enjoying the game against between your rivals, Everton and against Leeds? For now, it's still goalless to the best of my feet, guys. Then also, okay, I responded to the call. That is why it's called the Uganda Cranes. Yes, true. Uganda Cranes sounds like a sweet brand. No, please. You said sugarcane. No, candy cane. Try eating food. Where was the match played? At a construction site? Really? No, it was played at the Mandela National Stadium in Nambole. The stadium was constructed with funding from South Africa as an appreciation to Uganda, and that's why it was named after the great leader of South Africa, Nelson Madiba Mandela. So it's called Mandela National Stadium, Nambole. So Nambole is the location, where it is located. Then farmland. Yes, Robert, I'm back. Yes, my day was good. I'm watching the Leeds match because I was born in Leeds. I was born there are, oh, wow, you are born in Leeds, you you support. Oh, okay, I now understand. I now understand why you may have a soft spot for Liverpool. Sorry, for Leeds. Pedri, I hope I've clearly explained to you the tournament, its importance, and everything regarding the context with that. Some of the other teams that have already qualified for the quarterfinals, all the three hosts of the tournament have qualified. That's Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania have all made it to the quarterfinals, and then because they're taking two teams from each group. So in Group A, it's Kenya and Morocco that did advance to the quarterfinals. In Group B, it's Tanzania and Madagascar. In Group C, you have Uganda and Algeria, while in Group D, it's Senegal and Sudan. It's Sudan, then Senegal, in that order. So we will be getting the quarterfinals underway, not too far from now. That's Kenya will be up against Madagascar. Tanzania will be up against Morocco there, and then I think Uganda should already be up. Let me see who Uganda is supposed to face. Just give me a second. I'll look at that table once again. Okay, so Uganda will be up against Senegal, while I think Algeria will be up against Sudan in the other quarter finals. Yes, that's how the teams do expect to set up. Okay. By the way, Pedri, apologies for the morning. Power went off. That's why we lost connection. And by the time I returned, you had already left the broadcast. But I mean, those are the problems of some of our problems that we have to live with. But like I told you, I'm really, really trying, and I wish everything goes my way so that I can acquire a UPS, uninterrupted power supply, so that when power goes off, at least I have 30 minutes to 1 hour of continuing with the broadcast before we can run out of battery. So I'm trying to see if I can acquire that, although it doesn't come cheap, based on my preliminary research. UG, so they go for quite about, they're quite expensive depending on where you get them, and the size or the capacity. They could go for about some go for about $100, others $150, others go for about less than $100. Yeah, around that, depending on where you buy it and what type you buy, and then the capacity that you buy. So, but usually that's the price range, between $100 to $150 there for the best one. So if and then there's some that are actually that cost more, that may cost $200, some that may cost $300, but at least the average for mid-range is between 100 and 150 US dollars for a UPS, an interrupted power supply. That you can sort of, it's more like a rechargeable battery. So when power goes off, you still have, you can still run. That's what I look to acquire in the future to, contend or deal with these power interruptions. Otherwise, that then, okay. Rafa says, do you think Altai by India? Do you think Altai by India goalkeeper? I think what you meant is, do I think Altai by India is a good goalkeeper? I will say he's not a bad goalkeeper, but he's not good enough. Sometimes good is not good enough. And what do I mean? You do not get to be signed by Manchester United when you're not a good player. That's the first principle. So by the time you sign by Manchester United, it's because they've seen potential, that you have the potential, or you're a very good player. That's the starting point. But based on what they have, I see no huge difference between him, Andre Onana, and Tom Heaton. In any case, the way they are ranked, Andre Onana is the best that they have. Altai Bendia in number 2. Number 3 is Tom Heaton. And by the way, I've seen some Manchester United fans advocating that Tom Heaton should be their number 1 goalkeeper. Now, remember, he's a third choice goalkeeper, So right now, Ruben Amorim has made the decision to go with Footballtribe India. Whether it will be the decision he carries on throughout the entire season remains to be seen. Remember, the transfer window is still open. They could make a move to sign a goalkeeper, although it's looking less likely that they will recruit another goalkeeper. And best, if you've seen some of Ruben Amorim's comments, he seems to signal that he's sort of lost hope, or he's maybe been told outrightly that they may not be getting a goalkeeper in this transfer window, that maybe he has to wait maybe for another year or for one whole season, and then they look to get somebody maybe next summer or maybe in January, depending on what the circumstances are. But because the transfer window is still open, we cannot put a lid on it and say it cannot happen, because you never know. Maybe a late offer comes in for Andre Onana, Manchester United player is happy to make the move, he makes the move, and then Man United bring in someone. But at the moment, if I were to compare all the three goalkeepers, I'd put them in that order, because just back in 2023, Andre Onana was being voted the best goalkeeper, in Europe, and you do not go from being the best to sort of be dubbed the worst in a space of 2 years just because he made the move to Manchester United. And I mean, if we were to assess Manchester United players, he wouldn't be the first player that comes to Manchester United as a very brilliant player, and then suddenly they go bad. We've seen it with Anthony, we've seen it with Jadon Sancho, we've seen it with Onana himself, we saw with Harry Maguire, because if you do assess Harry Maguire's Manchester United career versus the defender he was at Leicester City, you will see that there's a disparity in that. You look at players like Casemiro, you look at players like Tyler Malacia, although he struggled a bit with injuries in his career. You look at Rasmus Højlund in terms of his lack of progress. Joshua Zirkzee, I know it's only been one season, but he's not lived to that full potential yet. You remember Paul Pogba never lived to his full potential. You remember Alexis Sanchez. So there's a good number of examples of Manchester United players that have come to Manchester United and they look very good, but then suddenly the world wants us to believe that they went from being good to bad, or even the worst players that you've ever seen. Remember last season, Ruben Amorim was saying this is the worst team Manchester United has ever had in history. That was, I would want to believe, in terms of team performances. That's what they were, that they were the worst team. But when you look at players and assess every individual player for their quality, capabilities, or even potential, they're not the worst of players, and they could go in different systems or different teams and thrive. You look at Fred. Ever since Fred left Manchester United, he's been one of the best players at Fenerbahce. So you assess that and say, maybe. You remember Jadon Sancho when he returned to Borussia Dortmund on loan last season, but one when he went on that in the second part of the season, and he helped Borussia Dortmund reach the finals of the UEFA Champions League before they lost out to Real Madrid. That was in 2024. I mean, he was showing that the quality is still there. He went to Chelsea. He didn't have the best of seasons at Chelsea, but at least he was at Chelsea. He was an improvement of the version that he always had been at Manchester United. So again, it begs the question: what's not going right at Manchester United? What's not really happening inside there? We can also talk about players that have come within their own ranks. You look at Marcus Rashford. Somehow they've grown tired of him because they feel he's no longer at the level that maybe they need him to be. And did he go bad just overnight? No, I wouldn't want to believe so. Look at Kobe Mainoo. Has he progressed ever since he broke through the ranks in Erik ten Hag's first season? And Manchester United thought, finally, we do have a Paul Scholes in the making back at Manchester United. But look at last season when you assess it, and maybe even ten Hag's second season. Again, he never really lived to that full potential. Of course, he's still young. There's still room for improvement. If well coached, he can become that player. So yeah, a lot leaves to be desired about assessing Manchester United players. You say, I think that Footballtribe India is a good goalkeeper, but he needs game time. Yeah, that is part of it, because I was impressed when I first watched him play for Manchester United, and that was against Arsenal in the FA Cup last season. He was very good. Remember, he saved the penalty, had multiple saves in that game. He looked really sharp. But then was given a couple of chances during the course of the season in the Premier League, and particularly I seem to remember that game against Brentford late on in the season when he was given a chance to play, and Manchester United lost by 4 goals to 3. He didn't have the best of performances, or he did not have a good day in office. So he needs a bit of consistent time, consistent playing time for him to show that he can progress, he can grow into being that good goalkeeper. However, also you ought to bear in mind that when you're playing for a big team like Manchester United or any other big team, is that sometimes time is not on your side. You're given a chance, 1 to 3 chances, you ought to prove yourself that you're better than the person they are replacing you for. If you can't prove that in a short span of time, then unfortunately you are bound to be pushed out very quickly, because quickly fans grow impatient with you if you're putting in bad performances, and we know how quickly fans turn on their own players, even though we've seen one too many times when a player is really, really good, then suddenly they have a bad couple of months, 1 to 3 months, or they have a bad spell, and then suddenly the fans turn against them and they're like, oh, we're tired of that player, he's not good enough. Take the example at Arsenal. You've seen the comments about Martin Odegaard, just because he had a poor season, last season, and everybody has forgotten what his previous 2 seasons had been, and that he was one, if not the very best of Arsenal players, in that, not just in the dressing room, but in the overall squad, competing in terms of delivery or performances with the likes of Bukayo Saka. And meanwhile, a penalty is being awarded against Everton for a handball by the captain, James Tarkowski. I'm sure you guys must be having a much faster feed than mine, so you can give me the updates on what's going on, but it's going to a VAR review. Tester of Life says maybe send him on loan. Again, if they hi JY, hi, how are you doing? Jokeris 007 incoming. Guys, by the way, forgive me, but allow me ask. I've never understood what the 007 means. I've always seen that sort of phrase or those digits or those numbers on Twitter, but I've never grasped what they mean. Forgive me, I'm not very good with acronyms and stuff, and slangs and jargons, but at least that one. So JY, please indulge me. What does the 007 always mean? I've seen it used in reference with players, especially when a player has just played the team. But to respond to Tester who says maybe send him out on loan. Yes, that could be an option, but also you remember, if they send him out on loan, that means they then have to sign somebody that is going to be the number 2 goalkeeper, or if that means an elevation of Tom Heaton from number 3 to number 2, then they must get a third choice goalkeeper. So it may not be that simple, it may not be that simple. I drink water, mate. I never miss having, water. I always do have water on my table. And this mug is always my neighbor, or some of you have seen my vacuum flask that I always do have on my table to help me hydrate during the course of our broadcasts on numerous occasions. So yeah, let's see. By the way, Jordan Pickford is my goalkeeper in the fantasy league. So it's 1-0 for Leeds after that penalty has been converted. Like I said, guys, my feed is slightly behind yours because I'm watching the game using internet and my bandwidth is a bit low. So oftentimes I have that lag. You says 07 is a movie about a spy in England. Oh, it's a movie about a spy in England, but in football terms, it means a player will go 0 goals, 0 assists in 7 games. Oh, okay. Wow. I've already seen that phrase used on Victor Jokeris. I've seen it used on Brian Bomo. I've seen it on Matas Cunha. I remember seeing it on Sanchez. I remember seeing it on who else? I seem to forget, but I've seen it with a couple of players. So thank you so much, JY8, for that clarification and for schooling me about that. Okay, let's wait and see. Let's wait. You said Jokeris is 007. So he's going to go 0 goals, 0 assists in 7 games. I reckon he may get a goal before we reach that, but that's also a possibility. However, for me, I do not want to be quick to judge him. I do not want to be quick to judge him. Does he need to score the goals as soon as yesterday? But I'm not going to be one to quick to judge him. 007 happened to Mukalo Modric. Yeah, that really happened. And almost, I did not, you see, the players that you watch, especially when they're coming through the backs, and you think to yourself, this player is going to have a very exciting career ahead of them. And Mukalo Modric, I remember it's not like I was following the Ukraine league, but for all the clips I did watch of him before he made the move to Chelsea, he just looked like an electric player, dribbling, shooting, assisting. Every little touch was almost to perfection, to finesse. But he came to Chelsea and suddenly he sort of did a total flip. He went from being the future to being the history, the forgotten one, really, not even the history, the forgotten one. So, and for me, sometimes it does happen that a player will join a league and he does not suit that league or does not fit that league. That does happen quite more often than we care to admit. We've seen it one too many times. You remember there's a striker that joined West Ham. I'm forgetting his name. Is that it? Yes, Scamacca. He joined West Ham and things did not click. He went back to Italy and suddenly he was banging it. You know, is he called Julian Scamacca? Scamacca, something like that. Yes, Gianluca Scamacca is the name. So he came to West Ham. Things did not work out for about maybe one season. That was 2022-2023, and it did not work out. He went to Atalanta and he looked a much better player. He looked a much better player. But when he was coming, was it from Genoa or something? He had looked to be very promising. A very promising talent. So unfortunately, those things happen where a player comes in and suddenly things do not click. Things do not click for you. Joy says, I'm a Manchester City fan and I'm glad Checky didn't go 07. I mean, that goal that he did score, quite impressive. The sort of the back heel Checky pass that he plays before that ball is fumbled on the legs of a defender and it runs into his path and he strikes it with his weaker foot. I mean, that's as good as a debut you get. Speaking of players that had a very good debut, talk about Tijan Reinders. I mean, he made it look like he played like Kevin De Bruyne with a mask on. You would think it was Kevin De Bruyne in Tijan Reinders' body. That's how good he was. And for all our judgment, based on where Manchester City will finish this season, mine being that they will finish, that they will come forth in the Premier League this season, was the idea that they have lost Kevin De Bruyne, and that's a player really hard to replace. Arguably, for me, the best player in the Premier League for the previous decade, and yet Tijan Reinders fit in that midfield like a fiddle. Of course, it's a long season. Maybe one game is, cannot formulate our entire basis to pass judgment on how good or bad a career he may go on to have. But those early signs were beyond impressive, really, for Tijan Reinders. He should become a pundit for Ugandan football. I mean, I've never gotten that chance, but I've written about Ugandan football. I used to write for websites about Ugandan football predominantly, and then that was for about 2.5 years during my time at university and immediately after university, and then also actually even after university, I continued to write Ugandan sports. I also did write international sports when I left my first job as a sports digital football journalist and that kind of thing, really. So the opportunity never came. I had hoped to be on radio someday or TV, but the opportunity never came. My career went in a different direction or path, and eventually I stepped away from, journalism and sports or football in particular. That sort of line went into totally different industries. But yeah, I decided to make a return and do this, what I'm currently doing. But thanks for the recommendation, really, JY18. Sorry, JY815, not 18. What does the 815 refer to? Because I remember the J, I think, stands for Jesus. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it stands for Jesus. I seem to remember seeing it somewhere. Jesus. Elche and Real Betis, it's one apiece. Then tomorrow, Real Madrid are going to be up against Osasuna. Do not forget that fixture will be on tomorrow, and it should be coming at 10 p.m. East African time. Real Madrid against Osasuna, but also we shall have the UEFA Champions League qualifiers. Rangers up against Club Brugge. Qarabag will be in action. Pafos FC will be up against Cevena Zvezda. That game is also on tomorrow. So for those of you that are interested in catching those fixtures, do not miss out on them. Now, speaking about Manchester City, I do not think there was a Manchester City player that placed a foot wrong. What's his name? James Trafford. He looked really, really impressive in that goal. Not that he was really overly troubled by Wolverhampton Wanderers, but he looked decent. Rico Lewis looked very, very impressive. Oscar Bob, impressive. Nico Gonzalez alongside Tijani Reinders in that midfield were quite dominant. But Haaland looked very, very sharp. That's why I did, in my prediction, I said he could be the top scorer for this season. Maybe Mo Salah gets right over him, but he should be retaining that boat once again, reclaiming it. Then, who else? Maybe Patrick Dogwood did not have as an impressive performance, but John Stones played like prime Maldini. You did have, of course, he did play alongside Ruben Diaz, and they looked impressive. Then you did have Ryan Ashnory, a good game for him. So, they were just impressive. They were just, Manchester City were just impressive. They practically blew away Wolverhampton Wanderers, and there's nothing they could do about that. There's nothing they could do about that. So should we give Trafford a chance or get Donnarumma if we get the chance? Now, of course, the scary bit about James Trafford, he's a very good goalkeeper, good with his feet, a very good shot stopper, but also you worry that a player of his experience at only the age of 22, certain level may be maybe too much to ask of him. And I'm not saying he's incapable of hitting the best of numbers or competing at the highest levels, but going from the Championship with one season of Premier League football experience to coming back to a title contender like Manchester City, because I expect them to compete for the Premier League title, albeit I do not expect them to win it, is not an easy ask. Not just also the Premier League, but also you have the UEFA Champions League. That's a huge step. Hi, Rodrigo. Good to have you on the podcast. It's a pleasure seeing you around. How are you? How has been your day? So, James Trafford, very good goalkeeper, one of the most sought after young goalkeepers. Of course, we knew about Newcastle's interest, but it could be a huge ask. And now you get to bring in a player like Gianluigi Donnarumma, who, by the way, isn't without his own flaws, but he has that experience. He's won it all, He's won domestic leagues. He's won the UEFA Champions League last season. So he has the experience, and he's still only 26 years of age, So I think he's a much better goalkeeper compared to James Trafford, if we were to make comparisons. However, like I said, he isn't without his flaws. And remember how Pep Guardiola is too particular. And by the time Pep Guardiola expresses interest in you, it means he has seen something really, really good in you. although some people are questioning it, saying that by the time Luis Enrique lets you go, he thinks you're not good enough. But I believe it's for other factors other than his prowesses as a goalkeeper, really. So I do not. I think if you are to let go of Stefan Ortega and Ederson Moraes, then you must be going for a better goalkeeper. You must be going for Gianluigi Donnarumma or any other goalkeeper that you may identify out there. You cannot leave everything to chance to trust James Trafford with everything. I think it would be too huge a risk. Then you did. Tester says, I'm off now. Enjoy the rest of your evening, Tribe, and everyone else watching. I will be back tomorrow. Thank you so much, Tester, for being part of today's broadcast. Bro, South Africa, a hit so ripped. Oh, South Africa got robbed. Is bad. No. Guys, do not ignore the exclamation marks. That it's more. I just wondering to myself because I do understand differences in opinion, and so that's why I put it out there, like that. Because while I may be of the opinion that all the penalties that were given against South Africa were well valid and rightful, somebody else could think, someone else could say, no, South Africa was hard done by, that South Africa was cheated, So that's why it is out like that, So it depends on how you see it. It depends on how I see it. We could have convergent opinions. We could have divergent opinions. So you say South Africa got robbed is bad. No. Look at it in the context of the grammar that it is written in, with the exclamation marks. We are wondering. For example, it's like somebody asking you, is Thibaut Courtois good enough? Not with a question mark, but with an exclamation mark. Or is Thibaut Courtois world class? So that means that he does respect that there is a school of thought that may argue that he's not world class, while also bearing in mind that there is going to be a side that will argue that he's world class. So that difference in opinion is why I put it that way, and I hope that says it all. Daniel Fakir is off to a winning start as Everton are beaten by a goal to nil at Elland Road. My prediction had been a draw, a 1-1 draw between these two sides, but Leeds have gone away with it with that one penalty that won them the game. Uganda finished last in their group. No, they finished top of their group. They did win 2 games, lost one and drew the other, so they finished with a tally of 7 points in Group C, ahead of Algeria, South Africa. Algeria and South Africa finished with 6 points, while Guinea finished with 4 points and Niger finished with 2 points from the same group. So Uganda on the opening day were beaten up by Algeria by 3 goals to nil. Then on match day 2, they did beat up against Guinea by 3 goals to nil. And on match day 3, they beat up against Niger by 2 goals to nil. While today they did share the spoils with South Africa in a 3-3 draw. And South Africa at one point, by the 88th minute, South Africa was leading that game by 3 goals to 1. And then Uganda got themselves a penalty. In the 88th minute, they converted that penalty and it was 3-2. In the added minutes, I think, was it about 6 or 8 minutes that was added, Uganda won themselves a second penalty, which helped them draw the game to 3-3, which meant that Uganda advanced. Had Uganda lost, then South Africa would have progressed to the quarterfinals alongside Algeria, and Uganda would have been sent packing. And this is the first time that Uganda are qualifying for the quarterfinals of the African Nations Championships. So that's the bit of context that I can paint for you in regards to Uganda Cranes against South Africa, or the whole context of the African Nations Championships as pertaining to that particular group. Anyways, guys, let's also go and look at some what has been making the rounds in the world of transfers. We do know that Aston Villa did reach an agreement with AC Roma for the transfer of Leon Bailey, a deal worth about 2 to 3 million euros in loan fees with an option to buy for about what, 20 million euros. Let's see. And according to Fabrizio Romano, Leon Bailey will undergo his medical as a new AS Roma player on Tuesday afternoon. He is landing on Tuesday morning, always planned by the club. So, but an agreement is already there in principle for the player, for Leon Bailey to join AS Roma. And AS Roma have been really, really busy because they did sign Marash Kumbula joining there from Real Mallorca on a loan deal. So it's about 6 million euros plus 2 million euros as a buy option clause, but not mandatory. So, like I said, Roma are trying to assemble a very, very decent team, by the way. And then I'm trying to find the, the actual info about, about the actual price. Then Fenerbahce are interested in signing Edson Alvarez from West Ham United. The interest is really, really serious. Then Napoli are back into the market looking for a second striker after Romelu Lukaku's, serious injury that could keep him out of action for about 3 to 4 months, as feared. That's how fears have it. Remember, they did sign Lucas Lorenzo from Udinese on an initial season-long loan with an option to buy, with an obligation to buy for about 26 million euros. Then Juventus did have rejected a 25 million euro bid from Al Ali last week for Manuel Locatelli. Then Xabi Alonso today was speaking about Rodrigo Goes, and he did say there are many rumors in the summer, but I've seen him well, and I count on everyone. I count on Rodrigo for sure, 100%. I'm not surprised by his comments, but again, he's one player whose name is not going to go off the lips of the transfer gossip and speculation until the transfer window closes. So either it will close and he will have stayed as a Real Madrid player, or he will move out. He will have moved away. Then Andre Silva has just signed his contract as a new Elche player. There, so joining from RB Leipzig, who will receive about 1 million euros plus 1.5 million euros in expected add-ons. Then Xabi Alonso also got to speak about the new recruit in Franco Mastantuono, and he did say Mastantuono has an incredible left foot. He's very good and he can play tomorrow. He has the quality, the energy, he's committed defensively, good momentum, the Argentine competitive spirit. He's good with the final pass. He is at a very good level. Remember, he's speaking ahead of their fixture against Osasuna tomorrow. Then Chelsea are interested in, is it Alessandro Bastoni from Inter Milan? There, Christian Romero, the new Tottenham Hotspur captain, did sign a new 4-year contract that will keep him at the club, I think, until June 2029. So that deal is all done and sealed. Then he was subject to speculation linking him with a potential move to Atletico de Madrid. Then Napoli had a contact with Manchester United today following Romelu Lukaku's injury, as he will be out for more than 3 months. Napoli did ask, do you rate Lios Openda? Lios, well, not known to me, I must acknowledge. Lios Openda, not known to me, really. I won't lie. He's not known to me. Indulge me on Lios Openda. From RB Leipzig, I've not watched much of him, so I won't lie to you. I've not watched much of him, so I can't even give you a rating about him, unfortunately. So, but thanks, JY, for asking. So, like I said, Napoli did ask about loan conditions for Rasmus Højlund. Remember, AC Milan are really, really keen of signing Rasmus Højlund on loan with an option to buy, more like, I think, with an option to buy there. So those negotiations with AC Milan and Manchester United continue. Now Napoli are in the race to try and secure his services. Then Southampton did open talks with RC Loans for Morgan Yalvagui. So that is there. We talked about Leon Bailey, Ademola Lookman. Inter will talk to Ademola Lookman's agent soon. Again, this deal is at a standoff because is expected to inform the Nigerian forward about deal being off because Atlanta and Inter Milan have failed to reach an agreement over the transfer of the player. You know, there's a disparity in valuation. Then Bournemouth did confirm the signing of Ben Dock for £25 million from Liverpool. Again, Liverpool very, very good at selling players, by the way. They're selling them for the right amount of money, and you know, it's all happening. And for people that are constantly questioning Liverpool's overspending, by the way, they're saying that in actual, while negating the balance of the conversation, that while they brought in players quite expensively, they've also sold players quite expensively. Hey, darling, how is Africa and Uganda? funny. Okay. How your day been? My day was good. My day was good. My day was good. My day was good. Oh, okay, just checking out on something. Okay, nothing there. Anyways, always. Are you Africa? Why are you asking? Why are you asking the questions in the format or in the format in which our friends or colleagues from India will be asking them? Anyways, let's discuss the latest from the transfer speculation and gossip as compiled by BBC Sport before we look to wrap this up. I can see it's about 3 minutes to making it 1 hour of this broadcast. Inter Milan are monitoring the situation of Cameroon goalkeeper Andre Onana, 29, with speculation still growing over his future at Manchester United. That's according to The Sun. Chelsea, did you see Everton got robbed? I mean, the way James Tarkowski leans into that ball, I mean, is questionable, but his hand stayed close to, like, in a natural position, close to his body. I mean, they must feel hard done by. I mean, sometimes you ought to make that movement, given how he was. I mean, it's not like his hands were apart or spread or even in this position. They were close to his body, and it's more like he's falling over and the ball hits his arm. I mean, really, again, it's another day that the game ends, and we're going to discuss the decision, a key decision in the game, as opposed to discussing the particulars of the game. You know, GT Ship says, please say Kevin's a good boy. I've said that. It's never a penalty. I mean, that's, in your opinion, it's never a penalty. I felt it was a harsh decision against Everton, really. Of course, the referee will justify it as simple as saying the ball hits his arm. He will say that he adjusted his body to obstruct the movement of the ball using his arm, but his arm remained in a natural position. There's no way he's going to move his body and have his arm stay in a. You see, part of my grievance with football, when it comes to handball decisions, is oftentimes it's like the rules seem to suggest that a player can move and then somehow they can leave their hands elsewhere, or in certain situations, it's like they do expect players to pluck off their arms like their doors and press them somewhere and then fast defend, and then they can pick them after, you know. I've often, on numerous occasions, I've used the example of Presido Kimpembe, that penalty that he conceded, I think in 2021 against Manchester United in the UEFA Champions League. No, I think, was it 2021, 2022? Yes, that, I think that was the season, 2021, 2022. Could be, you know. Correct me if I'm wrong, either that or earlier than that. And Presido Kimpembe has his face, facing the direction of the goal, his own goal, and then somehow he deflects that ball, or with his arm, with his elbow, you know, and it's given as a penalty. And I'm thinking, is he supposed to have eyes at the back of his head? to know that, okay, now the ball is coming at this flight in this direction, and if I do raise my hand well enough, then I'm going to, strike to prevent it from going into the goal or, making the correct pass. So it was a very, very questionable penalty for me in the formation of the handball. And I mean, how often do you jump in action of sport and then your arms stay as if you are standing at a parade like a soldier? And it just doesn't happen that way. So while some of the decisions are very subjective in nature, there's certain things that we cannot keep controlling everything, every little bit of the game. We must leave certain things to chance. We must acknowledge that sometimes our bodies have reflex actions that we have little control over in terms of our own brain to say, let me not make this decision. You're jumping in the air to try and compete for the ball or hit the ball, and then suddenly it hits your arm, and then that's a penalty. So it's that kind of way. Jetty Ship, Mr. Uganda Tribe is married to his subscriber. Why is spreading misinformation? Why is spreading misinformation, Pedri? But anyways, Chelsea are open to loan offers for England winger Raheem Sterling, 30, and want to move on a further 8 players before the transfer window shuts. That's according to the Telegraph. Good luck, Chelsea. The Blues have also rejected a loan offer from Bayern Munich for French forward Christopher Nkunku. They will only sanction a permanent transfer. Newcastle are set to launch a new £35 million bid for DRC forward Johan Wissa, but Brentford won't sell the 28-year-old before signing a permanent replacement. He's a billionaire. He's a billionaire of you say milk, he will give you some money. Who is the billionaire? The secret code is milk 10. Keep spreading the misinformation. Anyways, apparently Brentford want up to £60 million for Johan Wissa. Not him in their same mind is going to pay that. I do not think so. Anyways, Crystal Palace want to retain England duo Ebelechi is 27 and Mark Gay 25, who are targets for Tottenham Hotspurs and Liverpool respectively until after their Conference League campaign, which begins on Thursday against Fredrikstad. That's according to the Mirror. For $10, Pedri, I'm looking for $150 to buy a UPS, and you're saying I'm a billionaire. That's very misleading. You say then Crystal, okay, Tottenham have made a request to Paris over the payment structure of a deal for Eze with a proposed offer of £55 million plus add-ons. That's according to the Independent. Meanwhile, Palace are lining up Rennes' 20-year-old French defender Jeremy Jacquet as a possible replacement for Gehi. Remember, at some point in this transfer window, Jeremy Jacquet was linked with a potential move to Arsenal. Aston Villa have added a Chelsea and Senegalese forward and Nicholas Jackson, 24, to their shortlist of attacking options, but also face competition from Bayern Munich. That's according to Florian Plettenberg. By the way, Bayern Munich could be very, very serious about Nicholas Jackson. Manchester United and England winger Jadon Sancho has rejected the chance to join Roma, who were willing to pay £20 million fee. That's according to TalkSport. While Mikel Arteta wants to sign a left winger, but must sell players before he can make any further additions to his Arsenal squad. That's according to the Mirror. Aston Villa and Jamaica winger Liam Bailey, 28, is on the verge of joining Roma. We'll discuss that. While Napoli are set to enter a race for Manchester United and Manchester United striker Rasmus Højlund, we'll discuss that. Manchester United will consider letting go of Højlund, leave Old Trafford on loan, but adamant he is not being forced out of the club. That's according to the Guardian. Brazilian midfielder Douglas Luiz has agreed personal terms with Nottingham Forest, but is waiting on the Premier League club to finalize a deal with Juventus. That's according to Corriere dello Sport. Former Liverpool and Arsenal midfielder Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain is a target for Birmingham City, with the 32-year-old Englishman in his current club, Besiktas, willing to let him leave for the right price. That's according to the Mirror. While Leeds are close at reaching an agreement with AC Milan for Switzerland forward Noah Okafor at 25, with the fee set to be in the region of 17.2 million pounds. That's according to Florian Plettenberg. England striker Jamie Vardy, who has been without a club since leaving Leicester City at the end of last season, wants to reunite with manager Brandon Rodgers at Celtic. That's according to the Sun. For $10 for Mr. Tribe, the billionaire Mr. Tribe. That's all misleading. Anyways, guys, it's been a pleasure doing this with you. Thank you so much, Pedro. Thank you so much, Clodugo the GOAT. Thank you so much, GT7's ship, JY815. It's always a pleasure to see you around. Rafa Silva, thank you so much for being part of today's podcast. LFC, always a pleasure to see you around. And every single one of you that managed to tune in and that liked the broadcast, that did not, react to the broadcast, never sent in a comment, but you still watch anyway. I do not take your love and support for granted. So thank you so much. Allow me wish you a wonderful rest of your night, and I'll see you tomorrow morning. Guys, stay blessed. Bye-bye for now. Thank you.